Now available for the first time on Google Play, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are falling apart in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy on Google Play today. There was another mass shooting yesterday in Los Angeles County. And in this incident, a Los Angeles County firefighter wound up shooting and killing one of his co-workers, wounding a captain before driving to his home, setting it on fire, and then killing himself with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, many in the media would say this is just another isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of this violent mass shooting among firefighters, I see yet another incident in America's ongoing man crisis that I detail in my book, The Man Crisis. And from the details of this story, it's sounding like this firefighter who wound up shooting and killing his co-worker was possibly one of these beta males like I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that this man was a ticking time bomb for some time, and he was simmering and boiling in anger as related to something going on in his life. Now, essential workers like firefighters have been under extreme pressure during this COVID-19 pandemic because they have had to stay on call for extended hours at a time. And many of these males, especially beta males, when they are placed in a job in a high-stress situation, many of these men don't have the male life skills in order to deal with high-stress situations, and many of these men's boiling points are a lot hotter than your traditional man. And that could have been the situation that happened here. Maybe this firefighter was extremely frustrated about an issue he was having with one of his co-workers, and this issue wound up simmering and boiling over the course of a year. And as this man was simmering and boiling in anger for this course of a year at this fire station, and also dealing with the stresses of his personal life as related to the COVID-19 pandemic, maybe this was the thing that eventually wound up setting this man off to the point where he wound up exploding in a rage and wound up taking a firearm to his fire station to murder his co-worker and then wound his captain, his supervisor, before driving over to his home to burn down his home after killing himself. Because oftentimes when your beta male becomes extremely frustrated and angry because they don't have the male life skills to know how to think critically or how to navigate through their emotions, many of these men reach their breaking point, and once they reach their breaking point, they believe they have nothing to lose. So instead of them trying to preserve life like a firefighter usually does, what this man did was wind up going out here looking to destroy the lives around him, especially those who he believed were causing him stress. Now, when I look at this incident, it is very similar to what happened at the VTA in California, I believe. And in that incident at the VTA, that employee wound up exploding in a rage because he was frustrated with his job. And because he was frustrated with his job and angry at the company, he wound up going to the company, exploding in this rage, murdering 9 of his co-workers before returning to his home. No, he killed himself at the site. And when I look at both of these men, again, they fit that pattern and profile I talk about regarding beta male anger, beta male rage, and the mass shootings and the man crisis chapters in my book, The Man Crisis. And it's clear to me that this firefighter was a ticking time bomb, and this ticking time bomb went off and then wound up taking the life of his co-worker, wounding his captain before taking his own life. And I have to wonder if this man was to get some help would it have prevented somebody from losing their life? Because it looks like in this situation, because this male did not get the proper raised with the proper conflict resolution skills, he wound up going out here and exploding in a rage. And now a lot of problems are happening in the workplace I'm seeing right now as related to a lot of the pressures a lot of people are having as we try to get back to so-called normal here in America. And it's looking like a lot of these men are out here snapping and winding up participating in these mass shootings. Now, this is the second mass shooting that I've read about where a man at work wound up losing it and wound up participating in a mass shooting. And this looks like a new and disturbing trend as related to mass shootings here in America, where we have another man who was on the job, another essential worker, practically at the end of his rope. And because he felt like he had no support and he felt like he had nothing to lose, he wound up exploding in a rage where he wound up murdering his coworker and injuring his captain because he felt like he had no support. And this is another part of the man crisis many don't want to talk about in your political circles and your business and municipal circles. They don't want to talk about how many of our essential workers are at the end of a rope. Many of these people are really stressed. Many of these people are really tired because not only were firefighters fighting fires, they are also emergency medical technicians, and they had to deal with seeing a lot of lives being lost with COVID-19. So a lot of these men are on the edge of the edge, and many people are just sitting here thinking, oh, we're going to go back to business as usual. But many of these men have suffered great stress, and what's really sad is we're not having any sort of support system for these men, and that's why they are winding up exploding in a rage, because many of these men, they're holding it in, especially a lot of these beta males, and they're simmering and boiling in anger. And this is just flying over the heads of many of our politicians out here who are just thinking about, oh, I want to get back to business as usual, not thinking about the traumas many of our service workers have suffered over the course of a year. And many of our co-workers, not co-workers, but many of our essential workers have suffered extreme stress. And the stress is causing a lot of these people to have their fuse practically cut short. And it's just like I've said in many videos about how this pandemic has practically cut the blue wire and accelerated the clock on a lot of these beta males as related to them exploding in rage. That's what's happening with many of these essential workers who are working in these essential jobs. Their clock has been, the blue wire has been cut on the ticking time bomb that they had, that was counting down slowly. And now that clock is accelerating, many of these men are exploding in a rage at a higher frequency. And that's why we're seeing this increase in frequency of violence all across the country, because as people try to cope with the pandemic's trauma that's been emotional and mental due to the abuses of politicians and the abuses of business owners as related to policy, many of these people are at their wits' end, and many people don't understand how fragile a lot of people are. And again, this is leading to an acceleration of the man crisis across this country, as many of these men simmer and boil in anger. And now that anger is rising to the surface all across this country, as we're seeing this increase in frequency of these mass shootings, because many of our men who are already on the brink for a while, they are just exploding left and right all across this country. And I had warned that this was going to happen because I already knew how bad the man crisis was way back in 2018. And now in 2021, that's why I tell people to keep their heads on a swivel. And I'm now also not, in addition to telling you to keep your head on a swivel,
I'm going to tell people out here to watch their words, watch their mannerisms, because anything can set one of these beta males off. And what's the scary part about it is we don't know what they're going to do or what they'll be capable of when they go out here and do it, because a lot of these men, because nobody is giving them any sort of help, are going out here and they're destroying the world around them because they feel like they have no stake in it and they feel like there's nothing worth living for. So that's what happened in the case of that VTA worker who had practically lost his wife, lost his home. Now, he didn't lose his home. He lost his wife. He was just frustrated with his job because things weren't going his way. And I believe that's what happened in the case of this Los Angeles County firefighter. He was in a case of feeling frustrated and angry about the state of his life, and possibly one of his coworkers was getting on his nerves, and that's why he wound up killing that coworker the same way that VTA worker wound up killing select people. People were getting on his nerves. He was becoming frustrated and angry, and again, because he didn't have critical thinking or problem-solving skills, and many of these men, because they have bills, they can't just quit their jobs. They figure since they can't quit their jobs, they'll just destroy everybody around them that hurt them and destroy everything that they've built by destroying their home. Because a lot of these men, again, are so frustrated and angry about the state of their lives that they just feel like they have nothing to lose. And that's what makes these men extremely dangerous out here. And that's, again, why you need to keep your head on a swivel and you have to watch what you say in front of some of these beta males, because again, we don't know what they're going to do or what type of violence they're capable of doing out here. But when I look at this case, again, it refutes the whole gun control argument, because here is another man who owned his gun legally, who went out here and went on a rampage. So the whole argument about gun control really has been refuted with this case, and I even say the VTA guy, because many of these men, the problem has to do with the way they're raised, and it also has to do with their whole situation being exacerbated by the policies that were put in place as related to the pandemic. So many of these men are frustrated, many of these men are on the edge, and that's why everybody has to really think twice out here, because the man crisis in this country is going to be worse than the pandemic, because the man crisis, which was already bad with this increase in frequency in mass shootings all across the country before the pandemic, is now being accelerated at a faster pace. And that's why you, as an American citizen, need to keep your eyes open, keep your head on a swivel, and again, watch what you say, because setting off the wrong beta male could possibly put your life at risk, because that's how bad things are with this country, because nobody wants to acknowledge the man crisis, and nobody wants to say that America's men are in a bad situation, because we want to continue going back to business as usual, but we won't be able to do any business until we start taking some action to deal with this man crisis and invest in our men and try to get some of those deeply troubled men the help that they desperately need. Now, if you want to learn more about why your beta male winds up participating in this spectrum of violent behaviors, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBookstore, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, talking about men's issues and the man crisis, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Now available in paperback and ebook, The Man Who Rules the World. John Haynes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere.